And welcome back to the CODESHO podcast, everybody. Cole and Matt here again with Sean on the line. We're going to do our first virtual one, so hopefully we don't have any hiccups or anything.
We will.
We will. We absolutely will. It's going to be a fun time. So Sean, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but just so everybody knows who Sean is currently working as you are doing Android engineering, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so Sean is doing Android engineering right now, and Sean and I worked together at my last job, working for the guy Dan that I've obviously talked so much about how much I love him. And so, yeah, I mean, Sean, go ahead and give a little bit of background. It's my understanding that that was your first Android job, which you had previously done data. Data what? You were like a
data.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I graduated at UNLV back in OMG 2013 with a degree in stats. Then went to work as a data engineer for a couple of years. Lost my way, found it again through mobile development. I believe, and I don't need to because it's true, my first job as a mobile developer was at Flink with the Flink crew. Cole, Simon, and Patrick.
Yeah, we mentioned Simon last time, and obviously Patrick was on last time.
Simon's going to be coming on soon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first big break, Flink Enterprises. I don't remember exactly what the name of that company was, but and then moved out to Philadelphia, where I was a mobile developer at a couple different places. Initially Comcast in Philadelphia, and then an image processing software company called Slice, and now at a gym and health and fitness IT solutions company in DC called Mariana Tech.
And so when you started at Flink, obviously, I guess most people probably aren't privileged to start their programming career at somewhere like Facebook or, I don't know, Google or whatever, some big, really organized company. And obviously you weren't either. Your first job as an engineer was at one of the most disorganized companies on the whole planet. So I remember you and I talking a couple weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago, actually maybe over a year ago. And I remember you telling me that one of the biggest noteworthy things that you took away from finally leaving Flink and going to work for some big company was really learning about company structure and what it looks like to have a really efficiently running software team. So like starting out at Flink, what are some of your thoughts on like what that looks like? Like if you're a startup company, obviously Flink is super disorganized. Why was it disorganized? And what makes a team like Comcast super organized?
Yeah, at Flink, there was this guy named Cole, and he would just mess up everybody's code. Just go, come over and just.
But I heard.
Yeah,
and
just
then,
put his little fingers in it, and yep.
Oh yeah, everywhere. No, it was such a juxtaposition to go from a company that did not do agile development at all, Flink, at all. We had no stand-ups, we had no planning, we had no grooming, we had no roadmap, we had no feature backlog. We literally had Simon making tickets, and we executed whatever Simon told us to do that day. I'm sure it was similar with the portal, the dev web portal. But in our mobile space, it was just me and Travis, who were the iOS and Android developers for the Flink app. And it was, you would go into work and maybe you would be working on the music playing feature, or maybe not. It was the Wild West. You had no idea what you may or may not be working on.
How come things would be changing so fast?
Great question, Matt.
Because of bugs? Like because of bugs, or like because it seems like you're trying to build out a feature or you're not, and then like bugs might come up and you have to deal with those.
Well, let's be clear. Our massive user base of maybe like 5 testers that we had and no actual production users. I mean, we really had to care for these guys. I mean, Sean's hands were really full with all of these 5 users complaining, So.
Yeah. So Great question. 40%, I would say, would be to fix bugs, and the severity of the bug was based on how angry Dan was at any particular day / time he heard about it. Because he wouldn't hear about all of them, but if he heard about one that affected something that he took interest in, we would have to be on that ASAP. But in general, it was a lot of defensive coding where we would get bug reports in Firebase and we would have to immediately fix them.
Okay.
But that wasn't all of it. It was really because I mentioned there was no roadmap. We did have designs that Simon was nice enough to do. And we knew what the app needed to look like in, say, 4 months' time, or 3 months, 2 months, etc. There was this long span of starting the work of an app and ending the work of an app. And there was no in between. The app was either ready for launch or it wasn't. And so on a day-to-day basis, maybe, I don't know, I'll work on the login or not. Maybe I'll work on the what is it, the posts? Maybe I'll work on audio recording. I don't know. What do you think I should work on, Cole? It was literally
context. For some context, what he's saying is, like we would have like at least a roadmap for what the end of this product would look like. But all this company did was build an app and it would fail. And then they'd build another app and it would fail. And then they'd build another app and it would fail. And all of these apps were just this guy Dan's ideas. So it was like, well, that didn't work. Okay, Sean, like we know that you've been working for the last 3 months on this app, but like we're going to go ahead and scrap that whole entire thing and just kind of start over with this new idea that just popped into this guy Dan's head.
I see.
Awful.
So obviously, like discounting Dan was the boss, but there was no leadership. Sounds like Sean was pretty new. But you'd been a programmer for a while, but this was obviously like your first mobile app. Cole, this was your first job?
This was actually my second job, but this was probably my first job where I was able to do it like full time and actually get to be exposed to a few technologies. But yeah, it was weird because like I kept, they kept bringing on somebody, like they brought on an Android developer. Actually, funny story. They had this Android guy who was like, I don't want to say way overqualified, but he was way overqualified. And honestly, he did other things. He worked on like this guy would like manage like server warehouses and stuff. I don't know why he was doing Android development. Maybe not overqualified, but like cross overqualified. He was too good at another thing to be doing that.
Okay, I see.
So anyways, he ended up leaving. And then I said, like, can I jump in here? I really want to get into mobile app development. So I did. I got to do it for like 3 weeks. And then this jerk Sean comes in and just takes my job. And I didn't get to do Android anymore. So I was super excited about that. But I just had to move around a ton. I just had to keep pivoting between whatever it was that they didn't have somebody to do.
Yeah.
It was fine though. It was good. But I'm curious, Sean, as far as Dan goes, I've roasted him a lot on here. Do you think that he had any good leadership qualities or anything, like any good qualities at all?
He paid you. It sounds like that's not bad.
Well, that didn't even always happen. There was times that he didn't even do that.
Okay.
Matt, this is what we call a gray area.
Okay.
I'm gonna say Cole, I am frantically searching the deep recesses of my brain to find any positives.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Dan.
Let me hit you with a different question. When you're working with somebody like Dan, because there's probably a lot of people that end up getting a boss like that, how do you make the best of that situation? Like, how did you make the best of your time there at Flink?
You got to get everything in writing. Just to our listeners out there, just make sure you get everything in writing.
That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, that's not bad. I've heard that advice too. Yeah.
So here's an example. Dan, in December, actually, let's back it up. When I was hired in August, I was at Flink for exactly a year, from August 2017 to August 2018.
Are we going to get sued after this episode? We made it 15 episodes. Go ahead. Sorry, keep going.
We're not giving any last name. It's just Dan.
Dan, owner of Flink.
Yeah, well, I guess that's specific.
I mean, that's your version of it. So when I was hired at a very low starting salary. And I was promised that it would be bumped up after a quote
Like trial period.
introductory period where I was where I would then be proven worthy by Dan, assessed by Dan to then get a pay increase up to 50,000. By the time January rolled around, there was no talk of any of that from when I was hired. So I had to ask Dan, can you please give me what you had promised? And he said, well, in February, if you launch an app, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then I will increase your pay. And he did, but all of these conversations that I had with him were never in writing. And so I guess the one positive is that Dan was able to deliver on some promises that weren't in writing, which I guess is a positive. But in general, that was my mistake as a rookie developer. As a data engineer in a previous career, which is similar to application development, I had never worked in such a dysfunctional company where I actually needed to make sure everything was in writing. So that was a little new to me. But yes, if you're ever in that situation, just make sure everything is in writing.
That's ideal. But even in your situation, because you felt like a new programmer, it's hard to even. I mean, I guess it's worth suggesting, but can we get that in writing? The better. I mean, so your advice is great. Get it in writing if you can. The other thing that I just try to think of, because I've been in positions like that as well, where I was just like more junior, I just focus on really what I'm getting out of it. And it might not be the paycheck. It's like, okay, this is going to launch me. If I work here for a year and a half or 2 years, I'm going to be able to get that next job, which obviously you have, you've jumped maybe quite a bit. And that's awesome. But I like your advice, but maybe some people are nervous about that. And, or how do you approach it that second time when he said, okay, if you do something in February, I guess you could just say, can I get that in writing?
Yeah.
I guess.
I think Sean jumped at the right time, though. That's another big thing, is just knowing when is the right time for me to, when am I not getting what I'm worth?
Yeah. There's some crossover.
Yeah. And Sean literally did leave. I think you made a great move for yourself. I know it was really sad for us all at the time. But the crazy thing is it was falling apart. I'm actually going to bleep out Dan and Flink when we say it, just so that, I don't know if we need to do that, but we are being
Nobody
very
watches
specific.
Our show.
That's true. Yeah. But anyways, it really just kind of started falling apart after Sean left. I don't think it was a coincidence that everybody else left. It was just getting bad, and everybody realized we're worth more. We can get paid more. Yeah. Somebody's willing to treat us better. And the problem with Dan is you need to have a boss that doesn't have an ego and can listen to the people offering him advice, and especially when it comes to structural stuff. Dan was just not interested at all. He would be as involved or as uninvolved as he wanted to be, and no matter how uninvolved he was, he could just come back and scream at everybody for it not going his way.
Yeah, obviously that's rough. That sucks.
It's just crazy, and his mindset was just completely wrong. It's all of these really successful business owners all say the same thing. I want to hire intelligent people so they can guide me and tell me what to do as a business owner. And that just was not this guy.
Well, he was the smartest. So how could he possibly find somebody smarter?
Yeah. I mean, because this guy launched one piece of successful software. It was Sean nodding. It was what was it? A nursing thing or something. It was a piece of, no, it was a caretaker, something like that, right?
As I recall, he sold some educational education software to some branch of the government.
Oh,
and that's how he made his first big break, as I recall. But I could be wrong on that.
Well, maybe that part of it's right. I don't know exactly who he sold to. I do know it was educational software, though, for some sort of medical worker. It was a caretaker or a nurse or something like that he did it for, if I recall correctly. Really doesn't matter. Yeah. But he sold this one piece of successful software, And I don't know what his team looked like at the time, but I know that that gave this guy the fattest ego ever. And I mean, he just thought that like, wow, I'm a software guy. Like I know how to write successful software. So I don't know. But he was also trying to do something that was completely out of that industry altogether. Like this guy was trying to get into like entertainment, and I don't know. It was also weird because like I feel like Sean, when did you come in? Did you come in when we were doing the movies or the music app, or was it after that? I can't remember when you came in.
I came in right as the music and movies app were being sunsetted in order to pivot to a different vertical, which was I don't even know what you call it. Industry leader software where people could have their own version of Facebook white label for whatever their company was.
What were your thoughts on that idea? Did you think that was like a viable idea?
So I mean, to be honest, all of those ideas in theory sounded pretty viable. I don't think under the guidance of a different entrepreneur that they could have.
Somebody's making something like that right now. There's an app called Locals. And so it is like, it's the idea. It's not trying to be a Twitter competitor. From what I understand, it's like, it's more, I haven't used it yet, but like you follow somebody on Locals and it's like sub community. So like Scott Adams has a Locals. That's how I know about it. But like other people, like we could have a CODESHO Locals, and it's like, from what I understand, it's like a mini Twitter where like the fans of this person could interact, and then you can interact with your fans. So it is like social media, but it's like a subgroup.
Is your local under one app, or does each local have their own app?
I'm not positive.
Okay. Yeah, because his whole thing was just like reskinning the app for another person. And man, it was just from top to bottom, it was a disaster. It was like
actually, I'll disagree there. I'll disagree there. Sorry,
the
Cole.
Android app was really good.
Okay.
No, the Android app was crap, but I will disagree with it being a detriment to our careers, or at least mine, on the mobile side of things.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, like you said, like under a different entrepreneur. Oh, we're getting up a little bit. We're choking the wire. It's kinked. Can you hear Sean?
Yes, I can hear and see you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I didn't mean that it was a disaster as far as our careers go. I just mean it was a disaster in that like it couldn't have been successful with the business plan that he had. I mean, so for context too, with the business, like it was built on the fact that he was going around to people promising them something if they would give him some investment, and then he would never deliver, and we would just stay afloat by continuing to get money from all these people, and we would never actually deliver a product. And so I was just saying, like, that can't be successful. And at some point, we were so backlogged with products that like they were never going to get finished. But to your point, Sean, I absolutely agree. Like, I feel like that kind of helped launch me in place of comfort with like startup environment. And
well, this is why, like what I was saying earlier, you're working for a company, especially some of these small companies, and they actually might do really well. Right. But like whenever somebody leaves, you as the person who's leaving actually gets more out of it. Again, like maybe not monetarily, but like that's, so I really try to focus on that. What am I learning at this company? And so like, yeah, I'm gonna come to this company and I'm gonna work really hard, and they might make like millions of dollars. So I guess monetarily they might make more money, like actually, but like it probably hurts them more if I leave temporarily then it hurts me. Like, of course, I mean, you could say the same thing, like getting fired during a pandemic also wouldn't be that good. And now they've made that decision. But if I leave on as best of terms as possible, like putting in my 2 weeks, and I've worked there, I've gained a ton of knowledge that's going to help me out the rest of my life. I mean, possibly if you keep doing this career, but like they've lost a ton of internal knowledge. Like the code that I do isn't just in Git. Like there's so much knowledge up in my head. So in the end, it probably hurts companies. And that actually, it sounds like that's what happened with Flink. Cause like, I don't know who left first. It sounds like maybe Sean left first, but then eventually people started dropping off, and then there was nobody.
Within a month or two, everybody was gone.
Yeah.
All the developers, at least, and then they started outsourcing everything to Romania. But anyways, I don't want to get all really productive at all. What I'm really more interested in is that I remember Sean never really talked about it at length, but I remember Sean had said that one of the things that he I don't know, learned the most.
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. So the just to step back in time a little bit to set up the Comcast move. The environment at Flink in terms of delivering software was terrible. We had no process. We had no quality assurance. We had no testing. We did have a little bit of quality assurance when Patrick came in the last, I would say, 3 weeks before I left. But in that lack of process, I will say one of the best things about working at Flink for me personally was that I was able to try anything I wanted as a baby developer. Because there was no oversight, there was no code quality, I was able to make all of the mistakes that a baby developer makes. Code duplication.
I think, well, we'll give you a chance to go ahead and reset whatever you were talking about. So you had kind of just started talking about Comcast.
Right. So the nice thing about working at a place, probably the only nice thing about working at a place with no software oversight, no processes, no code quality, no testing, is that you're able to make mistakes, fail fast, and iterate on that, which at any other company would be disastrous. But luckily enough, the code quality was already terrible. So when I got there, I didn't do that much. I didn't make it that much worse. But I was able to. I was able to see for myself why software architecture is such an important part, because I would build something and then a month later I would realize I had programmed myself into a corner, and then I would just make a mental note. Okay, don't pass objects all over the place.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges, because like when you just hear that from your lead, that you don't always understand the concept behind it. They'll say, okay, don't repeat your code or whatever, like use this dependency inversion principle. Okay, but like why? And it's hard to explain until you actually do it yourself. So okay, now I understand what you mean.
Yes, the dependency inversion was one of the first gotchas that I came across in my coding, when I realized that I was needing to depend on the wrong things. And when I would make a change in the code, like a month later, I would spend all day refactoring it just to make that change because of the dependency inversion principle. A lot of other things, polymorphism, using that incorrectly, and having weird behavior come from some parent class that I didn't understand, because the classing hierarchy was just so complex and unnecessary. Yeah, so I was able to iterate off of all of those mistakes that baby devs made, or that I made, and really become a much better programmer for having seen the error of my ways. And then it really made me investigate options to all of these problems. And in the mobile development world, it turns out that people have already solved these. So all I had to do was just learn the tricks of the trade. And yeah, in a year, in going from a boot camp to my first job, I was able to go to a place that was a well-oiled machine, and I could go toe to toe with some of these more senior level developers at a functioning, continuously delivering software company.
Cool.
So, whenever you first started at Comcast, was there any fear of like, am I ready for this?
Oh man, I was. I mean, is this a PG show? Is this a?
Yeah, we
Is
try not to
PG
swear too much. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I was. I was shaking in my boots, as they say.
Well said. Well said. I can imagine the adult version.
So I don't know if I've ever told. Yeah, I've told you the story before. I think Cole. The move down here was not an easy move, and it happened in 6 weeks. We owned a house in Las Vegas, so when we moved, we had to sell the house, get rid of 80% of everything we owned because we were moving from a 4-bedroom, 2,000 something square foot house to a 700 square foot 1-bedroom apartment with no storage space. So that was stressful. Selling our house was stressful. The move across the country in a U-Haul was stressful. And the place that we had rented out initially, going belly up and having to find a new apartment the day of moving there, where I needed to show up to work in 3 days, was also stressful. So by the time, and on top of that, I am about to start my career as a real developer at a real software development company. I was very, very nervous. On top of just, am I ready for this role? Code reviews, testing, quality assurance, retros, grooming, all of it was new. It was all brand new to me. And but when I was hired at Comcast, I told them, oh, I'm familiar with this. Yes. Oh yes. No, I'm familiar with the software development process. And that was true. I was familiar with it. I had heard of it. But actually getting in there and doing it was, it was actually beautiful. And if you're a developer who's going from a place where the processes are bad, maybe it's your first time, to a place where it's actually good, I wouldn't say it's scary. I would say the processes are there so that you don't fail, and that's how I took it. What's scarier is delivering code that's untestable. It's not testable. It wasn't tested, and it wasn't checked for quality. When you get to a place that has good processes, you write tests, and I had been learning how to do that at Flink, even though I didn't need to, because I know I would need to eventually. You get to a place where people review code, and it's not a big deal. You pick it up very quickly. I would say within the first month, everything made sense, everything clicked, and just studying, making sure that developer best practices, and it comes quickly. I would say it goes immediately from being overwhelming and scary to a nice little warm blanket that you wrap yourself up in to make sure that your code doesn't crash.
And now you're probably terrified of going back to somewhere like Flink.
I can tell you about some stories at my current job now, which are similar. I will say that when I left Comcast, it was the best developer shop I had ever worked at. We had continuous deployment. We had a dedicated QA team. We always wrote tests, and we always did code reviews. And our team of, at the time I left, it was about six, 7 mobile developers. It was a pretty big team because it's a pretty big company. It was a nice learning experience to get to the next level after Flink, because not only did I get to practice what I had learned at Flink and good software development practices into good use, but I also learned from others how to do it a little differently, which is great.
I'm curious, real quick, because I want you to keep going. But like
Mm-hmm.
at Comcast, it was a really big company. You say it's like the smoothest company that you had worked for, obviously at that time. How long were your sprints, and like how did you deal with like developing something, you're writing tests yourself, and passing it off to QA? Is that all in one sprint? Were like the features just really small, or like what were you doing?
So first and foremost, Comcast was the best software development shop for processes. They had it down pat. They had a dedicated Scrum Master. They had product owners, and we would have demos at the end of to answer your question. Sprints were every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Grooming was in the middle somewhere. We always had retros. We always had plannings immediately after retros. So the sprints would start at literally the morning of the next the day after.
Oh, okay, I see.
The sprint close. One thing that I will mention is that the Scrum Master itself, which at some companies the product manager and Scrum Master and product owner might be one person. We had them divided out into separate roles, but the Scrum Master, I think, is probably the most important person on the team in terms of making sure things run smoothly. I say this because our Scrum Master at Comcast, as I'm realizing, was probably the best Scrum Master. I made a really good friend at the company I left after Comcast, and he's also a really good Scrum Master. But I would say she might just be a little bit. He's better at designs, and he's like an all-in-one kind of person. He's like one of those product owner / Scrum Master / designer who can do it all. But the way that our Scrum Master at Comcast, would keep everybody on time. Every single meeting had an agenda. Every single action item was documented. Sprints were perfectly groomed with tickets that she made, and she made them beautifully. And a Scrum Master really, much like a conductor at an orchestra, one might say, "Oh, what do you need the conductor for? They just stand there and do this."
Just wave that thing, yeah.
I have worked at places where we have Scrum Masters who don't know how to manage time in meetings, who don't know how to create tickets, who don't know how to use Jira. That's another really big one. She was a Jira ninja. It really does make a difference when you get to a developer. But by the time the developer gets to work on the feature or bug, it's such a clean experience when the Scrum Master has Jira perfectly set up. The groomings were executed correctly. The planning was executed correctly. Meetings don't go over by an hour because she doesn't know how to manage time, or he doesn't know how to manage time. I'm kind of missing it right now because I don't have that luxury of
living in nostalgia
master
right now.
Oh man, it was nice. It was nice.
I have a question for you on the topic of the Scrum Master, and more importantly for this question, the product owner having all of the features prepared for you guys and ready to go. How did you, as a developer, or did you at all, communicate ideas up to the product owner, and what did that look like if you had your own ideas for the product?
So that's the thing about Comcast. It was siloed. So, I mean, each role was carved out. You knew your position and you knew what you needed to be working on. There was very little room for innovation outside of your role. So I would say it's almost non-existent at a place like Comcast, where they hire you because you are an experienced mobile developer and that's what they want you to do. They don't want you.
Yeah.
They don't want you making ill-conceived comments about the product. Oh, why is this login button not, why doesn't it have haptic response? And they'll just look like you. We've user researched this, and haptic response isn't really that important. And you just that's I have, so at Comcast I made a lot of mistakes as a developer. I would say that I was a fairly good developer in terms of actually developing software, but in terms of being a good member of the sprint team, I would make comments that were unnecessary to a meeting that would make the meeting drag out, because I felt like I needed to prove myself. I feel like I needed to go above and beyond. But in the end, working at a place like Comcast, you really learn that you really have to make sure that not only are you good at software engineering, but you're good at software development in an agile process. Once you get more comfortable with working in a sprint team, especially one like Comcast, then I would say you can start making maybe you can start making better informed decisions about the product you're working on. But I would make sure that I remember one time I was in a sprint planning, a retro, and we had pointed tickets, and we underpointed the tickets. And in retro, I just asked, why don't we repoint the tickets mid-sprint? Why are we letting these points stand on the tickets mid-sprint when we know, maybe like halfway through that it's going to be more, it's going to be more. And my manager everybody just like looked at me. I'm expecting, an intelligent, theoretical back and forth with software development processes and SCRUM, Agile. And my manager just looks at me, I swear, for like an hour. It wasn't an hour, but like for a lengthy amount of time, just like staring into my soul. No expression on his face. And then turns to the Scrum Master. Lisa, do you want to take this one? And I was just like, oh, are we not going to have it this? And she goes, yeah, we don't repoint sprints afterwards, because the law of large numbers dictates that we'll just get better at pointing over time. We don't need to go back and fix what's broken, because eventually we'll get it. We'll just learn from the mistake and get it correctly. It also messes with our velocity if we repoint, and it messes with the numbers. And like I really got schooled there that day, but I would make mistakes like that early on, and that was because even though I was maybe good at Android development, I wasn't necessarily great at Agile, which came later.
So I was going to ask. So then, what was the result from the Scrum Master? So your team has decided that you've underpointed these things. It's going to be a lot more work. Did you then like deprioritize some work? Is that what happened there? Or like, that's one specific example. I'm not sure if you remember, but yeah, like, go ahead.
I can't remember exactly what happened, but if a ticket rolls, then that means that we're not, we didn't meet our sprint goals. And if we don't meet our sprint goals, then it's not the end of the world, but it means that our velocity looks bad. And it just means that we need to do better. We can't, the damage is already done. Is basically the issue. Yeah, there's no need to go back and repoint. I can't remember exactly what we did in that particular sprint though.
So then now, as an experienced developer, what would you do? Because you're not going to repoint. Would you take stuff out of the sprint?
It's interesting. We had a very large team, and so usually someone would be able to
pick it up or something.
And as you're asking me these questions, as I'm remembering, I think that's exactly what happened, where somebody finished early their sprint work and was able to pick up, either help me out or pick up other tickets that I was working on. And in fact, now that I recall, it means that even though we pointed that specific ticket incorrectly, it all comes out in the wash. On average, because we have so many developers, because there's so much wiggle room, possibly, that even though we pointed this one high, maybe we point this one low.
Yeah, I see.
It's a law of large numbers kind of issue where the variations and errors in pointing comes out. You'll point some
Yeah.
over, you'll point some under, and because you have in our case, we were fortunate enough to have such a large team that it usually came out in the wash, meaning it would all work out in the end if tickets were pointed incorrectly.
Yeah, I see.
Did you guys have tickets tested and developed in the same sprint, or how did that work?
Yes. It was not done until QA approved.
Okay.
But not necessarily deployed.
That is interesting. We actually did continuous development, meaning it was at the end of the sprint, we had a functioning piece of software to deliver that could be, we didn't deliver it we didn't deploy it, but it was fully featured, fully deliverable. At the end of the sprint, it was something that you could ship. So there was no there was no hiding things. I mean, sometimes we would have to hide things behind feature flags or comment code out because the feature wasn't totally ready.
Yeah.
But again, more pressure on you to make sure that the feature is fully fleshed out. We at the end of the sprint, anything you committed was going out, and so you needed to make sure that it was production ready. Everything you work on is production ready. And I will say that at Comcast, the tickets themselves were were created so well. I look back and they were created so granularly and so well that I kind of envy whoever, like, I know it was my manager and our scrum master that created them, but I have to create tickets now, and I almost want to get a like a Udemy course to do it, because I look back and I know how good they can be, and I don't always create the best tickets where I work now, and I do want to get better at that. The creation of the tickets themselves, the feature tickets, that can make or break the sprint as well. If you create a ticket, and even if it's pointed correctly, if at the end of if you didn't plan the ticket out, meaning you forgot to mention, we also need to hide it behind a feature flag because this other thing over here that it depends on isn't ready. If you forget about if you don't create the ticket well enough, then that could also mean that your sprint is busted, because you now have to do more work than the ticket originally allotted for.
Now that you understand the role that you play as a developer in the, I don't want to say in the agile process, because it's more in Scrum than it is in agile, but now that you understand your role there, do you see yourself ever playing a different role, or do you ever look at another role and think, like, I could see myself doing that, whether that's product owner or Scrum master?
I have a lot of respect for a good Scrum master, and a good Scrum master teaches you the concept of time management, of not doing more than what the ticket needs, not overdeveloping a feature, sticking to the letter of the ticket, making sure that you don't have scope creep. It would be nice to learn how to be a good Scrum master, because I think it does make you a better software developer overall. Sometimes, especially at Comcast when I started out, because I tried to be, I did try to show off and be cleverer. Cleverer? Yeah, I tried to be cleverer.
You're doing it right now.
yeah, so cleverer. I tried to go outside of the ticket scope. I remember one time in particular, there was a bug fix that I needed to do, and it was fairly simple. The background of some view was not the correct color, and the feature itself to set the background color of this screen was based on some over-engineered class inheritance hierarchy. So it would get its background color from a backgroundable interface, which was implemented somewhere else. And I thought, well, I know I could just flip this one, because the bug says this particular screen is white and it needs to be gray. Okay, that's a one-liner. But then I thought, oh, I can fix all of these screens that are gray. There was like 7 screens, and make sure that that in the future this doesn't happen again. And I spent like 2 days, maybe 3, on this bug. And my manager just goes, "What's going on? You're spending 3 days on this?" And I go, "Oh no, but it's going to be no. We just need you to fix that bug." He's like, "But I have the code here. You need to make a tech debt ticket. We'll groom it and we'll put it in a future sprint. But your goal right now is just to fix that screen." And at the time, I was thinking, "But I already did all this work. It's good to go."
Yeah.
But I wasn't taking into account that maybe product wants this feature for this particular screen fixed because customers are complaining that this screen is not correct. And yeah, these screens over here aren't either, but nobody goes into the screens. Maybe analytics says people look at, 1% of our user base looks at these screens, whereas 90% looks at this screen, the homepage screen maybe.
Yeah.
So it's more important that I fix that one thing, get to the other screens later in a tech debt ticket, and then move on. Now, I want to say that the overall fix that took 3 days to fix it for good was very clever. I mean, really good.
I believe you. I'm sure it was. Not over-engineered. It was perfectly engineered.
It's perfect. 100 years from now, it'll still be perfect.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the those are the traps that I would get into as a younger developer. And another nice thing about Comcast is that my manager just beat that out of me. Like, nope, you wrote all this code to fix this. Nope, we're not having any of it. We're not putting any of it in.
Did you stash it somewhere for later?
Did you? Yeah.
I did, and then I ended up. It wasn't a priority, so I never got around to it.
It's funny
because there are more important things than your code. The most important thing is that the product is good and that people want to use it / buy it / pay for it / pay you.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I understand. Doing work.
Yeah. We actually have. I mean, at the current company we're at, we have that to the extreme. I mean, so extreme that, especially in the beginning, with the lack of structure and lack of process, it was just like it does not matter. Just get this thing live. We have to start making money with that right now. And it's interesting to see how companies evolve. I like how you've explained Comcast in that, like, it is so well developed and so well structured at this point that what we can expect to get out of the development team is so predictable. And like you said, like, everybody's got this role that's super important. I guess, it's interesting because, like, I find myself struggling sometimes with this where you'd said that your role in that Scrum team was just development and just getting tickets. And did it ever bother you that, like, I really have some good ideas here and I just can't get them through to the product people? Like, does that ever bother you, or did you just like that kind of work where you don't have to worry about that?
All right, Cole, you're asking me some really deep, dark secrets here. So not in terms of product, a lot of the product decisions were already pretty much made by the time I got there. And to put in perspective, what I worked at Comcast were 2 Android apps. I was on the team that worked on the Xfinity mobile account app, which is just like if you have let's say you have a T-Mobile account, T-Mobile has an app that you can download and manage your account there. That's what we did, but for Comcast Xfinity. And for another app, which was called I forget what it was called, but it was the voicemail app. So Xfinity had some voicemail app that Android users could use to basically mimic the iOS voicemail app that comes native on all iOS phones. Xfinity made one for Android that was just basically a copycat of that. And so I worked on that app, and that app was in development and wasn't released yet. So I got to work on something that was pretty fresh and brand new, and I had so many ideas, again, because I wanted to prove myself. Not so much on the product. I wasn't nitpicking designs or.
But maybe like on the architecture side or like the structure of the code. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Immediately when I got there, we were downloading voicemail MP3 files linearly. So if you had 200 voicemails, it would take approximately a minute to download all of them to your app on a cold start, on a fresh install. And I saw that as a place where I could show off my concurrency skills in RxJava, which is a reactive programming framework specifically for Java. And I had spent, I think, maybe 2 weeks on a proposal for redoing the concurrency so that we could do it in parallel. And at the end of it, it took maybe, I don't know, like 6-7 seconds to download.
Oh wow!
200 voicemails. It was pretty cool. And it was interesting, the reaction I got. A lot of people thought it was over engineered. Some people loved it, and to get buy-in, that was maybe one of the first days where I realized, you could have a good idea, but you really need to make sure that you have everything fleshed out, because not only do you have to have the buy-in of your peers, of your manager, but the manager is responsible at the end of the day for the engineering side of the product overall.
Yeah. And
you basically make sure you document everything, make sure you have white papers ready, because you will get a lot of questions, as I did, in trying to fix this issue. I learned that, if you want to be a player, if you want to go in, let's say, out of your comfort zone, your day-to-day development, and do something quote groundbreaking for your team, it's not, you can't just half-ass it. If you want to realize it, you've really got to, because you're asking your team. In my case, it was a complete rewrite of the architecture, and you have to go in there with more than just an idea. So I guess to answer your question, I did try to do things outside of my comfort zone, and to get more notice, to make things better for the product. But it's not just about having a good idea. You have to make sure it's well documented, it's easy to understand. I ended up writing a little article about why this is better, why using this architecture was clean architecture.
It worked. It's interesting though, because it worked. You said it. I mean, obviously, it might not have been 100% bug free, but it worked.
Yes.
And the speed, the performance improvement was like
dramatic.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of people brought up questions like, well, what happens if the users have 10,000 voicemails? I see here that you have a thread pool, but what's the max count on that thread pool? Is it ever going to run out of threads? Are we going to get overflow errors because we run out of memory? And people come back with a lot of great questions to your great idea, and you have to make sure it's fleshed out. I mean, again, if you want to be a player, you really have to your A+ game, especially at a company like Comcast.
I think your idea was good, and you can handle the thread pool linearly, like what you were already doing. Anyway,
RxJava is they hide a lot of stuff under the hood, so in theory it should work. But you're asking, you're asking the library to do a lot, and people wanted assurances. Today, I would actually use Kotlin coroutines, which would be much safer. But yeah,
cool.
One thing, on this podcast a lot, we like to, as much as possible, offer advice to junior developers or people like, how do I make this transition, whether that's at the very beginning or like they don't even have their first job, or maybe making a move like you did from some crappy little startup to Comcast. And so my question to you is, what?
Crappy little startup.
It's true, man.
One more jab at Flink.
Sorry, man. It's just, it is what it is. But I imagine that, like you said, I mean, obviously you were nervous going from Flink to Comcast. So how did you sell yourself with one official year of Android experience to a big company like Comcast?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, and then
How did you get that
what
job?
did the interview process look like? Especially as somebody interviewing in a
It,
state that's not even the one you're in.
yeah. So it started it started right when I got to Flink. I knew I wanted to be a good developer, and I knew that I needed to learn some kind of skill. I knew that I would need to keep learning and keep progressing. I think the smartest thing you can do is look for whatever tech stack you're involved in, look at what the job descriptions are for a lot of these roles in your field. For me, in Android, people wanted RxJava, Dagger. They wanted to see retrofit. And when I first started, I had no idea what any of that was because the bootcamp didn't go over any of that. And these are very complex libraries and take a lot of time to learn. But immediately, when I realized that Flink was not going to be in my future very, very soon, um, I started asking, how can I get to the next level? What are the technologies in my field that everyone knows that I need to know and that I need to have a good understanding? This is also assuming that you have experience in the tech stack or already. The boot camp that I went to, I thought was pretty good at getting me ready for the Android stack. It
What boot camp was this?
This was Udacity,
Okay. They're
and
getting really big.
Yeah.
I also have another a book that Vital. This Android book. I've read a lot of Android books. This one is the best. If
Victor
anybody
Grant
is
one?
interested.
Yeah, I'm curious. What
No,
book is it?
no, it is a dummies book by I believe the author's name is Barry Bird with a
Okay.
U,
Mhm.
and a lot of books out there, it's like a they're like Twitch. It's like a Twitch but in a book. Hey, we're gonna make an app,
Yeah.
and there's really no there's no there's no deeper understanding. Granted, it's hard to write a book that shows you the basics of writing an app, but also gives you that deeper understanding. This book
Yeah.
is the quintessential book where you not only learn how to build an app, but you learn the whys.
Mm-hmm.
So I can send you the name of
Yeah,
that book
I'd be
specifically.
curious. Yeah, I'd be curious about that. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And you
It's
read
funny
this
because I haven't
before you interviewed at Comcast?
during the boot camp. I had read that book from cover to cover because I had just happened upon it. I didn't know that it was going to be as good a book. I would say that book and the Udacity courses were all I needed to get a job, definitely, and be pretty comfortable in the Android platform.
And how long did that take from the moment you said, I want to learn Android until you were
Probably
at Flink?
a year.
Okay. And did you feel that same I mean, I want to circle back to the Comcast question, but whenever you started at Flink, were you nervous about that or were you pretty comfortable?
I was nervous. I would say I was. Yeah, that's a good question. It's been so long. I forget how nervous I was starting at Flink. You're right. I was pretty nervous to actually work on an app that I didn't own.
I just want to throw this out there. I know this is like, this might go without saying. This goes for you too, especially. This doesn't apply as much to me, but I feel like if you're going to be a junior developer, it really helps to have a good personality and have a personality that people like. Sean for sure did. And so like everybody just wanted to work with Sean. So it like didn't matter, I guess, whether or not he was the most expert Android developer. It does when you're somebody like me. I'm not as nice as you two. So maybe it's harder.
Nah.
Nor as humble. Both of you are pretty humble people. Insert sarcastic remark from Sean now.
I'm the most humble. I can't
Yes.
do a Trump.
Good one. Matt nailed it. I'm not an improv guy. More of a writer.
It is interesting though. Once you get like really good, it is so hard. I guess this goes for anything, but it is really hard to like remember how terrifying it was to kind of make that leap of faith. God, I remember thinking like, oh my God, I cannot believe Sean is leaving here to go to Philadelphia and work for freaking
Yeah, that
Comcast.
sounds like a pretty big
This
jump.
guy has the balls of a Texas Longhorn. That is crazy. So I don't know. Like, I just don't know if I could make a big leap like that. Every leap that I've made so far felt really daunting and intimidating. So I just commendable. I think it's commendable that you did what you did. But I still like. How did you manage to sell yourself? Like, how did you do so well? Or would you say that was the interview process for Comcast good, and also was it intimidating? Like, did it?
It was very good. It was so I had interviewed around. I was doing it. I was doing the rounds maybe in April, and I accepted the offer for Comcast in late May,
Mhm.
and the Comcast interview was a code sample interview. It wasn't a whiteboard interview,
Oh, okay, cool.
You
and
think that's better?
I do much better at those types of interviews because it's really just like, show me what you got
Yeah.
for this specific field.
Mhm.
And
Wasn't it a Pokemon thing? Didn't you have to do like a Pokemon app?
no, although I'm curious to like who you're confusing me with.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead and build Pokemon Go.
I swear you built
You
like
have
a,
a
what
week.
did you build? I swear you showed us like a Pokemon app or something.
I
That was his side
I,
project. That was his personal.
I built what did I build? I built a character list. It was a master detail view on Android
Mhm.
that needed to show a list of characters, uh, and it needed to each character in the list, and just a regular scrolling list. And each character has a row in the
Mhm.
list. Each character needed to be tappable and go to a detail page for that character.
Yeah.
It had to be white labeled, meaning given some configurations, you needed to make a Simpsons character list app, or a Game of Thrones character list app, or The Wire character list app,
Mhm.
and it needed to work on tablet. It needed a bunch of other things, but kudos to Flink. I already had experience in making sure that our Flink app worked in tablet, making sure that it was white labelable, um, and yeah, and that's about it. So kudos to Flink for setting me up nicely for that code challenge. Yeah, a lot of the skills that I learned, not just on my own, but also at Flink, were pretty relevant to the code challenge specifically, and that's why I was saying, Cole, earlier that
Thanks, Dan.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a great guy.
So what did it mean to make it white labelable? Like, did it communicate with an API, or did you just need to have some configuration file, or what did that look like?
So specifically for Android apps, you can reskin the app. I mean, in a many different number of ways, but specifically for Android, I would say the easiest way is to leverage the build system's product flavors, which are similar to iOS targets,
Yeah, it's like the same thing. Yeah.
whereby you can, at build time, just literally switch, and you can all of a sudden build a brand new skin version of the app that points to different endpoints, that has different themes, different colors, different assets, and by leveraging product flavors in Android, it's the configuration is very simple.
So I want to go back real quick to, you had said that you think that you like the code challenge better than whiteboarding, and I think actually both of us agree.
Yeah.
Matt and I have talked about interview processes before, and I mean, because we hire people at our current company, and we've had to design an interview process, and we're trying to do it in such a way that it doesn't have all of the pain points that we've had in the past.
Yeah.
And so first, why don't you like whiteboarding? And well, yeah, let's start with that. Why don't you like whiteboarding? aside
Cool,
from the
because I'm not
conferences.
good at it.
Yeah.
Have you had to hire? Have you ever had to do hiring? And have you
I
ever?
myself, no, I've never been part of the hiring process
Okay.
at anywhere where I've been.
Okay.
I think for me, the easy answer for the whiteboarding thing is I just feel like that's a terrible representation of what it actually looks like to be an engineer. Like you would never actually develop something that way.
Yeah, it doesn't seem day to day. It doesn't seem like day to day stuff. And actually, I had a buddy who was interviewing at Snapchat, or like he talked with a technical recruiter at Snapchat, and they sent him something. They sent him. It was like in the same PDF document. Up at the top, they said something like, um, we try to make our interviews as close to like what you'll be doing day to day as possible. And so then they kind of explained that. And like 2 pages down, it said PS or whatever. Like remember, interviews are a little bit different, so make sure you practice on like leak code and code signal and all of it.
Yeah.
So it's just like they purposely like, and I don't have any problem. I do think it's good to understand the like algorithms, like
Absolutely.
like complexity. And I don't know how you would necessarily like. I think that you could like figure that out in like when talking with somebody, but like I agree that it just that's not day to day. Like knowing that stuff is good, and you might incorporate that in your day to day stuff. But preparing for an interview might mean, okay, I'm gonna go work on leak code for a couple of weeks instead of like learning like whatever some new architecture component on Android is. And it's like it feels sucky. Like, is it I think it's better to be like, okay, well, I don't actually know coroutines, so let me go study a bunch about coroutines before this interview, or I'm gonna go study. I'm gonna go like do leak code and like reverse a linked list or whatever. I mean, hopefully you know how to reverse a linked list, but like you're also not doing it that much day to day.
Yeah. Have you gotten a job, Sean, where you were whiteboarded during the interview process?
I was whiteboarded maybe 3 or 4 interviews. Yeah, I would say 3 or 4 of them were whiteboard interviews. Of those interviews, I may have whiteboarded 5 times in total, and I only ever got one correct. So I did get one. I got one. But no, they were all crash and burns. Except for that one that I got, they were all crash and burns.
And how do you deal with that? Like once that's over, how do you not beat yourself up and just kind of move on from that?
It's tough. It's
Did you beat
weird.
yourself up?
Actually, yeah. Like so that's a good question. But also, I want any listeners out there paying attention that like Sean's a professional developer and has been for a while.
Yes.
And even he's struggled with whiteboard interviews. I have too. I also don't think I'm an expert at anything, even though I just play an expert on a podcast. But like, yeah, it's like these things are tough, and that's part of the thing. The interview process is difficult in general for the company as well, and so that's just one of the things. I don't know if that's the best way. I'm not convinced that that's the best way to figure out if somebody's a good or great developer. And like obviously Sean, like I said, Sean has been a professional Android developer for a long time and at big companies, and he didn't get fired. I mean, I don't know his whole history, but like he didn't get fired from these places. He's doing it. He's doing it professionally.
And it's worth mentioning that he had a successful career temporarily at Comcast that he decided to leave. I mean, he didn't get fired. So he was at Comcast and then after that whiteboarded and failed.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
like it's worth understanding that
Yeah.
like I mean, I'm sure that you could get really discouraged if you were to burn on some interview. And it's just like I don't think that's a great representation of anything, and it's not worth beating yourself up on. But that's human nature. So how do you deal with that? How did you deal with that? Whatever
disappointment.
Yeah, disappointment or whatever.
I think you have to go in with no. I mean, the first few, especially one in particular for Facebook, where it was like a softball question, and for whatever reason, I was just blanking. And if you've never done a whiteboard interview over the phone or over some telecommunication, not in person, it's very difficult. You think an hour is enough time to solve one of these problems, and I was struggling so bad. All of a sudden, there's 10 minutes left, and I have no idea how to figure this out. It's a very stressful experience. And the only thing I can say is that you sort of have to go in with no expectations. One of my coworkers, they said that the best thing you can do is try and figure out really early on if if you think you can solve it.
Mhm.
Like if you actually think you have a chance at solving this, know upfront, be honest with yourself. If you can't, then immediately pivot into talking about how you would go about solving it if you knew some missing pieces.
Okay, interesting.
So we're reversing a linked list. I don't know anything about linked lists, but I know about lists. So if
I
I
know about
needed to,
reversing.
yeah. And it's easier when you have a concrete problem. I can't remember. I can't even remember.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
But basically breaking down problems as much as possible into discrete steps early on, if you and sort of fun, at least being able to break down the problem, I would say.
Yeah.
If you can at least break down the problem, I would say you might have a chance to impress them for at least another round.
Yeah.
And
That's good advice, though. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Breaking stuff down. Like,
yeah, no. I really like
yeah.
the advice of like being honest with yourself at the very beginning of it, and at least salvaging what of that you can. I think that's a really smart way to go about it, because I've definitely seen people in interviews that just start to like mumble and ramble, and and like it's just making it worse. And it's just like, tell me what you do know and tell me what you don't know.
Yeah.
If you could be honest about what you don't know, then you're a human and you're like me, and I can understand that, and maybe you're even more relatable. But if you're just trying to sit there and like arrogantly just
I did an interview one time. This was also for Android, and it was like a live debugging they wanted to do, and actually it was
live debugging.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was cool. I came into it pretty confident, and then at the time I didn't know anything about Android's live data, and so that's like, actually I am kind of curious. Are you still using like RxJava, or like how much do you pivot over to like the live data stuff, which is like now their architecture component?
I've actually tried it all. I've
Okay.
In my spare time, I've tried every single architecture component out there, and I don't use live data anymore, but I did heavily for a particular app. I don't remember much. I used to be really, really into it because at the time, live data was actually the first reactive programming library I'd used, and then I used RxJava, which I thought was better, and then I used coroutines, which I thought was better than RxJava. But to answer your question, it's been a while since.
So that was the hard part about like the debugging. It's like, okay, come in and debug this thing. Okay, and then they're using live data, which I have, like at the time I had a rough idea of what it should be doing because I had used RxJava as well, but it's like I don't know this framework, so I'm like tracing it back, but like the real answer would be, okay, I'm coming into this project, I'm not going to solve it in this hour, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to like the Google documentation or Stack Overflow or something, and I would learn it, and so I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do here. So I started Googling. That is what I was doing. But it's like, it's gonna take longer or potentially could take longer than an hour. And that's one of the frustrating parts about any interviews is like, if they're quizzing you on, like, I mean, exactly what Sean was talking about. If they're quizzing you on a piece that you happen to not know, like you can talk about it, but like at a certain point, like you could talk about what you would do. But that's why sometimes it can be frustrating from the employee's standpoint. It's like, okay, well, now you know what I don't know, but you don't know what I do know, and that's some of that is like the hard part.
Is it crappy that they don't tell you what it is that you're going to be debugging beforehand?
Yeah, I'm curious to know more about that interview, the specifics. I've never done a debug challenge.
I mean, they had an app that was built with like the standard like these days, the standard Google preferred, like they had like, you know, view model and rooms and live data, like that kind of flow. And I guess so they didn't tell me that's what it was going to be, but it's like I got that code maybe 30 minutes before the like I got a link to download it 30 minutes before the actual interview started. And so I unzipped it, and, you know, just to make sure that it could run. And I was just going over everything in those 10 minutes. And like they had a readme file, so it would show you what, like, here's like the 7 things we want you to debug. And they wanted to see how you solve problems, which is cool. I like I said, I was very confident about that. And so I don't think that I panicked or anything like that. But yeah, it was like, okay, well, I don't know this. And so I Google, and that's what I asked. I go, do you care if I use Google? And they said, yeah, like just do whatever you would normally do. I go, okay. And so that's what I was doing. But like,
What
it's
was one
hard.
of the? I'm
Right.
curious. What was one of the? This is just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
for my sake. What was? Can you remember a particular issue that you had to debug?
It had to do, one of them had to do with, actually, so I don't know this component right now. They have something to do with like page data, and the object, the live data object that I had was not immutable live data, but I needed to be able to refresh it from something else. And so I had to, that's as much as I can remember. And so I
Because
had to,
some feature wasn't implemented or it wasn't
oh yeah,
working
oh yeah,
correctly,
oh
or
yeah. Well, they wanted me to do a swipe to refresh specifically, and so the swipe to refresh on the layout isn't hard, but then I had to get the callback. I had to get it to the view model, which also didn't have like mutable live data to actually update, like to do the update. And for whatever reason, I'd 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 have to go back and look at it. For whatever reason, since I didn't know how to, like, because it wasn't mutable. With mutable, you can
Mhm.
just post this value
Right.
or whatever. Just say, okay, here's this new data, update it. But you had to
Mhm.
go back to the original data source and invalidate it or something,
I
which
see.
is what, yeah, that's just where I got
So this,
held up on.
so it wasn't really a debugging issue. It was more like implement this feature.
Oh yeah,
Finish it.
yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah.
Ah,
There was some
okay.
debugging. That's understandable. There was some debugging parts of that as well.
Mhm.
I don't remember the specifics, so it's been a while.
But there were 7 of them. You had to do 7 things in an hour.
I don't know if that was like, since I didn't finish them, I'm not sure if anybody finishes them. Maybe
Ah,
they just have, you know, like, here's 7 tasks to gauge how well, like, where you are. Maybe they were only expecting 3 or 4. But like, obviously, like, yeah, I don't know.
So for the guy that says, why would they test you with this when this is code that you've never seen before, you've never written it? This isn't maybe a good example of something that would happen in the real world. I defer to Sean. Did you ever have to debug someone else's code at Comcast? And how often did you have to, if so?
oh yeah. That is an everyday occurrence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess the thing is, like, for me at all of my jobs so far, very rarely am I jumping into other people's code actually. So for me, that's
Ah,
not
I
that,
see.
just working on small teams or whatever, like
Yeah.
that's not. And plus I honestly don't know, like I haven't worked for a company nearly as big as Comcast. So I actually, out of naivete, I don't know what that looks like what.
But I would still say you do this all the time, because you jump in our Laravel code base, and you're getting features done, or like you might recognize a bug. You didn't write
Yeah,
that
but we
code.
don't want to talk about that because for this scenario,
Oh,
we
okay.
don't want to. I don't know anything about that, Matt. So,
Okay.
Sean, tell me about that. How often did you have to do that?
Yeah, it was a pretty big code base made by developers that at the time when I was working on the 2 Comcast Android apps that my team was assigned, had code written by developers that sat right next to me,
Mhm.
had code that was written by my manager years ago, had code written by developers that were no longer there.
Yeah.
And so it really is, uh, it's I mean, it's not too bad, but you do get a sense of how people write code differently, even though it's the same app and it's the same code base.
Yeah.
You get used to people's styles, and in terms of debugging, it really is a dark art. I mean, I remember I was assigned this bug in the homepage of the app, we had a very complex system of parallax scrolling, and for certain devices, it was extremely laggy, and that was the way that we were using images that were bundled into the app. We weren't bundling in the different image sizes for the different screen densities. We were just bundling one, and for certain screens, for certain devices with like less power, some of these high res images were taking up a lot of CPU time. And so I had no idea at the time. I don't know why this thing's laggy. I'd mess with it. I would throw the phone in the air, see if that fixed it. I had no idea, but it's interesting. I guess debugging is an interesting skill. I don't know. You get good at it. You get instincts and you get good at it.
But you can't get good at it without doing it. Like, it's not even something that you can read about. Like, reading about will just be like, here's some methods to try, but that's not the same as actually doing it.
Well, so one thing that you can read about that is helpful. I remember thinking, I would say this was me at the beginning of vShred. I have to block that out. We've never said what we at the beginning of the company that we work for now. One thing that I thought I was good at was debugging, and it wasn't until maybe like 6 months later or so that I was like, I'm going to really dive into like the Xcode tools, which, like you said, like you can't figure out like exactly how to debug. You're going to have to do it. But if you do know the tools, that can be really helpful.
Oh yeah.
Like there was one developer at our current company that refused to set up like Xdebug for Laravel, and all he would do is just die and dump everything. And he swore like, this is the best debugging tool you've got. And it's like, no, dude, set up some breakpoints. Like, make this wait. And he was like, no. And I'm sure that he just didn't know how to use it. But like, he just swore. And it's like, once you learn those tools, they're there for a reason. Like, they can definitely help. And
I can stop the code?
Yeah, like we can stop and see all of the properties in memory right now. Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, Xcode has some really good ones too. So does Android Studio.
Yeah, it's good.
So knowing those can definitely be helpful. I hate when people like it's like you said. There's a lot of people that once they learn something, like they swear by it, and then they don't want to learn anything else. Whether that's Objective-C and not wanting to learn Swift because you just know Objective-C, whatever, or whatever else it is. I know die and dump. I don't need your breakpoints. Why would they? It's like Sean said, like they probably invented this for a reason. It's not here for nothing. Like these guys thought a long time about this. Whoever made Xdebug probably spent over a year of their life developing it. I doubt they did it for no reason. It solved some problem. So, but anyways, I'm going to force you to answer this question, Sean. How did you sell yourself to Comcast? I really want to know, like, what did that, like, maybe I need to be more specific. Like, did it ever come up, like, on your resume, I guess first question, did it say that the only Android experience that you had was at Flink, or were you able to, like, use your previous experience at, where did you work? Slick Deals, right? Were you able to use that at all to help you get the job, or like, it just seems like a really big leap going from Flink to Comcast.
I dropped your name and they said, "Oh, you know Cole? Oh,
you know that guy?
Yeah. Get him.
In Philadelphia, Cole James is like a household name.
Yeah, everybody knows.
Everybody knows it.
The Cole James. Oh yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
CJ?
And by the way,
Eastside CJ, yeah, I know him.
He does that podcast with Matt, right? Oh yeah.
Yeah. No,
think I can meet him?
He does that podcast with that other guy. Ooh, I forget his name.
We're gonna be doing signatures here before you know it.
That's true.
I bet it is really cool for you now. Like, we have a guy that we hired recently that worked at Apple, and he worked there for like 4 years. And like, once you have that name on your resume, it's just like, oh yeah, come on in, we got you. We've got a place for you. So like,
it sounds like when they hired him, like, I don't know if that was like that deciding factor, but they said that they were pushing to get him.
Yeah. I'm sure being at Comcast is the same way. Like, if you're good enough to work there for a year or whatever, like, then you're probably good enough to work anywhere.
Yeah.
So I would say that if you're going for a place that's quote the next level in your career,
Mhm.
it's tough to say. I will say that I had some advantages that maybe other junior developers didn't have. As Cole mentioned, I was a data engineer for 3 years before I became a mobile developer. So I wasn't completely unfamiliar with programming. Because I was a data engineer in a previous career, I had already some big names on my resume, and that helped. I've had recruiters say that me having the experience of just working at a large company, Caesars Entertainment or Slick Deals, just working at those places, even if it's in a different field, helps. So I did have some pretty big lifts going into it. They probably the best thing you can do is really tailor your resume to match the job description, which sucks because I know everybody hates writing resumes, because if I hate it, and I'm not a really hateful person, but if I hate it, I know that people out there hate it much more. But literally, if the job description says, we want you to know these libraries, this framework, these testing testing methodologies,
put those on
put
your
them
resume.
on your resume.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
What a novel idea.
That's a good idea.
You literally, I remember one recruiter, he looked at my resume. This is way early on. He was like, listen, Sean, you like, how am I going to hire you if you don't know anything that we're asking for? I'm like, yeah, but I'm an Android. Yes, but do you know this, and this? Well, yeah, I know that. Why isn't it on your resume? And I go, well, you bring up a good point, sir. I don't know.
Here's the thing that I realized, and or at least this is my opinion. Maybe I'm not right on this. The resume isn't really for the devs, like the devs that are hiring you. I think it is just to like get your foot in the door and get through HR.
100%.
Because like I looked at a resume one time that a recruiter friend of mine sent me, and I thought it looked bad. Well, first of all, it was like 5 pages, but like I thought it was bad because like the sentences, the bullet points, to me meant nothing. It's like, oh, I used Git to save my company's code, for source control. And I was like, I know that Git.
Yeah.
I know that Git does it. Yeah. And like he mentioned that in like 2 or 3 things. And I was just like, you could just mention over at the side, like Git, knowledge of Git.
Yeah.
But like, it was just like repeated bullet point. But I think it didn't matter because the recruiters and HR are matching up. They're matching up the terms, which is kind of what Sean's saying.
Created iOS project using Xcode and Swift. Thanks, appreciate that. Yeah, no, but you're right. I mean, I think like a resume to me, they do seem pointless, but I think basically what it does do is, you're right, it's that ticket into the job, and then it does create some conversation points during the interview process, like, because obviously you're going through that. But yeah, they've always seemed just silly to me. But Sean's right. I mean, if you just tailor it to that job, you're
looking for retrofit. I have retrofit.
Yeah, it sucks though, because it's like there's even other YouTubers that talk about this, where it's like resumes are silly because what companies end up forcing developers to do is write stuff on their resume that's not entirely true, just to get their foot in the door.
Oh yeah.
But like, I mean, I guess that's just a consequence of the old school style of interviewing. Somebody needs to come up and like change the game as far as software interviewing goes. Somebody came in and said, we're gonna throw it for a loop, and we're gonna like change the way that you run your software company as a whole. But like, nobody's come in and said, this is how you should interview developers.
People,
like, nobody does it right, it seems like, as far as I can tell. But maybe Comcast did a good job. I mean, I think doing code challenges and stuff is a good idea. But as far as like what gets your foot in the door, it's just broken. I mean, you could just lie all day on your resume and get in the door. So,
I agree. However, even though I haven't been a part of the hiring process, I did get to sit right next to my manager at Comcast, and he would show me interviews,
like
and we
resumes?
would laugh at them. I'm saying, resumes, yeah. because some people literally just have a 5 pages worth of bullet points of every single Android library or iOS library, framework, methodology, architecture, lingo, and it's literally just a list of everything. And
I wonder if you could actually get a job. It would be fun to try to apply, like just
I've seen
purposely
it.
making.
We had that one guy that gave us like a 5 or 6 page resume,
yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
I just think like you have got to be full of yourself to give a 5 page resume
Yeah.
and think that I'm going to sit here and read this.
Yeah.
That's crazy. 1-2 pages max. If you have more than 2 pages, trash.
Yeah.
I actually got it down to a 1 page. So the real skill is if you can get through the resume algorithm that HR uses in 1 page, you're halfway there, which I was through trial and error able to do. I have my resume down to 1 page, and it does hit. I mean, I do have to change, like, let's say if I'm applying for a job that uses Swift UI, which is it's kind of crazy that there are jobs now asking for Swift UI experience. But if it says
5 years,
5 years Swift UI experience, please.
Got it.
If it has,
10
yeah,
years.
put it on there. Yeah, put it on your, like, take the 5 seconds to switch out something that maybe it was relevant when you last wrote in your resume. Switch it out with something that is specific for the job. I would have like 10 copies of my resume just with different bullet points, different skills, because the key is if you can write the 5 page resume that just lists everything and get past HR, but then when you get to the hiring manager, they're just going to laugh at you. So the trick is to get it down to 1 page by tailoring it to what the job description says.
Smart.
And that you're done. You're halfway done. And then all you have to do is interview well, and you're good to go.
All you have to do is invert a binary tree. And then you're done.
I think one thing other people do too that's kind of a mistake, I think I've been guilty of this too, is trying to prove yourself too much with your resume by putting all of these technologies that are not applicable to the job, like, oh, I know Laravel and Swift and Android and you just go on, and these people are like, well, I actually think that ends up hurting you, because then they look at this and they're like, oh, so you spent a year of doing Laravel when you could have been doing Android or whatever, and then it ends up just hurting you in the long run. So I mean, Taylor,
actually that's a whole different conversation, because whenever I hear people talk about this all the time, they're looking for, people say T developers or Pi developers, right? Where you got 2 T's, and somebody mentioned like a comb developer, which I think, I mean, I guess it depends on which company you're at. If you're at a big company like Comcast, they probably do only want you to know Android. You're doing Android. Don't touch the database. But so yeah, like I constantly, like, I read stuff a lot about this where people say they're looking for these T developers or like who knows a lot, or Pi developers. But yeah, when you're getting hired, you're always only getting hired for a very specific thing. I mean, maybe not always, but like in general, like it depends. Certainly, it depends on a company. If it's a brand new company starting up, they might be interested that you know this other stuff. But I think as a member of a team, now I'm contrasting what I said, as a member of a team, I think it's better. Again, maybe it depends on the size of the team. Like at Comcast, they already had 6 Android developers. They probably had 6 iOS developers. But the fact that me and you jump back and forth, as well as going into Laravel, I think that's a better attitude than just being like, well, that's not my project.
Yeah.
So
well,
the company needs it, so I'm gonna hop over.
Yeah, there will be a time to talk about that once you get your foot in the door. Y'all can talk about your cross-platform ability. Man, I love coming up with words on this show. You could talk about that once you get your foot in the door. It helped it at our current company. But that wasn't even really worth talking about in the interview. That had nothing to do with what they were hiring me for.
So shrink it down. I like that advice.
Yeah. At Comcast, was there any ability to like do other things other than Android, or were you pretty much just on that?
No, it was.
Keep asking about Comcast. I guess we could talk about all the other companies. We've been really stuck on Comcast.
I look at Comcast longingly for certain things, and definitely one of them was the process. It was a clean team, a clean setup.
Why did you leave?
So, I was not a fan of it. I wish. I was not a fan of. No, it was not the money. I wasn't a big fan of certain people there.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times people say, what do they say? You don't quit the job, you quit the manager. Now, I'm not saying it was your manager, but I do think that like the team and the people you work with day to day are more important than maybe even like the specific tasks or the job that you're doing.
Yeah. Is it true, Sean, that there's no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders? Is that true?
No comment. No, I'm just kidding. I've been I will say that I've been trying to gun for a managerial position at where I currently work. And that's going to take some time because it's not just about being a good programmer, it's also about being a good people person. And so I've been reading a lot about software development and how it relates to managing a team of developers. And the more I think about it, the more I think that it's very much if the team is not succeeding, it is almost always on the manager.
I think it's 100% on the manager.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the book Extreme Ownership?
No, but I'm always curious. I have one that my boss recommended. It's sitting over on the shelf. It's Managing Humans. I think I can't remember. I read it a couple months ago.
As opposed to,
I think it's
managing resources. You don't. That's the thing is you
that's
don't.
A good point.
You don't manage people. Jocko talks about this. Extreme Ownership was written by a couple of Navy SEALs, and so, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a military book, but it's just like these leadership principles learned in combat. But he talked about this on his podcast, the Jocko podcast. Like you manage time, you manage money, you don't manage people. You lead people. And that's the problem. I think too many managers, and so that's why it's called Managing Humans. Me and Cole were talking about this a while ago. Even just, I don't like it in the software development world. I don't like it when they call programmers resources or anybody resources. I think that's you're already going down the wrong path of thinking. It's like, oh, we don't have enough resources on this. Don't use that word.
You're starting with the wrong psychology. One thing that Jocko, the author of that book, Extreme Ownership, and he has a great podcast too, you should check out. But one thing that he says is there's like this false perception that in the military, all of these guys are just drones and they'll do whatever you want them to do because they're just these like trained warriors. And if you tell them something just because you're higher rank, they're going to do it. And he says like, that is not true. They will not. These are some of the most hard-headed people, some of the most stubborn people on the entire planet. And if you want to be a good leader, you have to give them some if you want them to give you some in return. And you have to treat them like the people that they are. They're not drones. They're not robots. They're real people. And I mean, I think that does happen sometimes in the software world too, which is why, I don't know what your thoughts are on it, Sean, but like one thing that I find maybe one of the biggest reasons why I don't want to work for a big company is because I could see that happening where, you just become somebody that you're just pushing tickets through, you're just writing code, and for all intents and purposes, you're easily replaceable by somebody else that can just write code and do the same thing. So maybe I'm not cut out. Maybe like I'm better cut for like I don't know, like a creative position. I'm not sure. But like, what do you do about that if you're that type of person? Like, I guess the first question is, do you like that kind of work? Like, is that okay with you? Does it bother you that you don't have creative input if you're on a really big team?
At the time when I first got hired at Comcast, I was just happy to be working, happy to be working, and to be working on such a team with a great setup. Mm-hmm. It was really refreshing. So I was enjoying it for that. And then yes, 100% agree. As time wore on, the cleanest process, the cleanest system will not make up for a lack of leadership, where the leadership at every single level is very much top down. Do as I say. Just no input, no communication. It's it's not necessarily even a Comcast issue. It's this person managing humans in the book. It goes into, as your company gets large, very large. It's very difficult to have communication through the ranks. I'm sure that that book that you had mentioned, Matt, like you had just
Extreme
mentioned
ownership.
it, like yeah. I'm sure that talks about how to solve that problem in the military, how they're able to solve that problem. But I would say that at large companies, the ones I've heard and have been in from other developers, the ones that I've heard from other developers and the ones that I've been in, it is a place where you don't have ownership in anything, and you are basically just there to push pixels. And yeah, it can be draining. But I will say that there are times that I miss the clean, pristine processes that don't exist at where I currently work. And
Are those times called crunch times? where you wish you weren't working all weekend fixing some bug because it could have been solved earlier up the chain?
It's not so luckily I don't have to put out those kinds of fires. It's more of it's just more in the software development process itself, where this ticket could be groomed better, this ticket could be broken out more, this ticket is not a 5-pointer. We don't need to go back and repoint this. This meeting is running way too long. Nobody's taking ownership of other people's time. There's no communication between us and this other team. It's glaring, having been at a company that did it very well. There might be something to that. There might be something into having a clean process. Maybe you have to give up a bit of yours and your team's autonomy in setting all that up. I don't know. I am on the search for both, though. I'm sure you could have both. I'm sure you could have ownership as well as a clean process. I'm sure it's possible.
Yeah, I think I'm also hoping that it's possible. I think it probably comes down to getting the right people in, right? Like, because if you get the right people in, actually, I think even in that book, Good to Great, he says like process is, I forget, but so I'm not going to remember the quote, but he says like process is a replacement for bureaucracy. It's like process is only needed when the bureaucracy is too high, and obviously that's like the extreme. So that's not totally true. You will have some process, but if you get good buy-in from everybody that's in there, because they're all really good people, maybe the process goes smooth, even though it's maybe less rigid. I think the problem is, as the company scales, they can't depend on Matt. They can't depend on Cole, right? So what they do need a process where it can be a little bit more cookie cutter. It's like we just need a good Android developer maybe you can't be Facebook or Comcast, but maybe there is some like mid-level company where it is better than Flink. For example, I didn't work there, so I don't know. But like, anyway, I assume that it can be as well. I don't know though. I haven't worked at a big company either.
I think, Sean, your point is profound, because you can have a lot of creative freedom, and you can wear a lot of hats, and you can be super involved in the process of I don't know, researching the product and deciding what to do about it. But what comes with that is a lot of frustration and a lot of disorganization and a lot of putting out fires on a Saturday night. And when you work at a big company like Comcast, you kind of trade that for, maybe I have less creative freedom, but my job is far less stressful, and I know what I'm doing when I come in here every day. And that's got to be pretty rewarding, like coming in and having just a clear idea. When you work in a really startup environment like Flink or whatever, that can be frustrating, where it's like you come in every day like, what am I doing now? What what problem do I need to solve? And sometimes those aren't super clear. So that seems nice at Comcast.
It is something that I'm trying to answer for our team. It is something that I want to bring to my current company, and I don't know how, exactly, because I'm not a professional Scrum Master, and if I had an advice for someone who maybe was a senior developer or a mid to senior developer who wanted to make their entry into management, I would say, get yourself a great Scrum Master. Don't settle for a Scrum Master that doesn't know what they're doing. Get a great one. They will make your life as a manager and a tech lead so much better. And that's what yeah.
Oh, sorry. Have you considered getting your Scrum Master certification? Like, not to transition to being a Scrum Master, but if you're talking about being a leader and like reading books on this, even as like a lead developer, do you think that getting that Scrum Master certification and knowing that process more is beneficial?
I
Or
was about to ask the same question.
Yes, but only because if you don't have a good Scrum Master, then you are depending on someone who will not come through for you, and you will have to pick up their slack. Because even though it's a team effort, at the end of the day, if the software doesn't ship, it's on you, the manager. It's not on your Scrum Master.
I think it makes a lot of sense, though, for developers to go get certified either as a Scrum Master, or there's even certifications for developer in a Scrum team, right?
But usually the prereq for that is that, like, the Scrum Master certification. That's what I've seen so far.
Oh, you do the Scrum Master first, and then you do the developer.
Yeah, it depends. Like, Scrum Master one seems to be 2 days. Developer is typically 3 days. Developer needs a total of 5 days, and 2 of the Scrum Master days can be used. That's what I've seen, at least on the Scrum Alliance website.
Yeah. Well, either way, I could see that being super beneficial because, like Sean said, it seems I guess like a sports team. If everybody on the Scrum team knows their role and they can execute it well, and that's only possible if everybody understands how it's supposed to work.
And I need to understand your role and my role. I need to know my role really well, but I need to understand what you
exactly. I mean, the running back needs to know what the quarterback is doing, or else the team's going to fall apart, and the quarterback can't do both roles. So. I mean, so anyways, I mean, it does seem like a sports team. So I think that's actually a really good idea. I know you said you were looking for a Udemy course, Sean. We'll send you over. What is it? The Scrum Alliance? Is that the website we were looking at?
I was, the links I sent you were Scrum Alliance and then scrum.org. That's the other one. These are like the 2 big certification places,
like certified or yeah.
And maybe you can get your company to pay for it.
Yeah,
because some of them are cheap, like $700, but some of them are like in the thousands, like almost $2,000, or some are like, I saw one that was like $2,500. It's like maybe that's going to benefit my career. Like in the long run, that might benefit my career, but like in the short run,
I mean, it seems like a small price to pay if you're a company and you're already paying this guy thousands and thousands of dollars a month, just a couple $1,000s more to make sure that he can do his job.
Thousands and thousands and thousands a month.
Yeah.
As it turns out,
tens of thousands of dollars
as it turns out, CJ Eastside gets paid way more.
What are you talking about? Everybody makes.
I know. I mean, you just said thousands a couple of times.
Okay.
You are making thousands of dollars a month. That's correct.
Yes. Okay. Here's the point. Thousands. When we're talking about a $2,000 course, the average developer probably makes more than that a month.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you. I was just joking.
Thousands and thousands and thousands and tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Yeah.
That's not you.
Y'all don't make that much? Seriously?
I did notice the Lamborghini he was driving outside.
Yes. So. And I got that one's like a month or 2 old. I really got to get it replaced.
That's that Scrum Master money right there.
You know, when you get new tires and they have the little things on them, the little hairs?
Yeah.
Those are starting to come off the Lamborghini.
That's the measurement of when you know you need to buy a new car.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. The hairs.
I don't know what you call
I don't know what they're called.
The tire hairs.
The tire hairs. Yeah.
Y'all knew what I was talking about.
You know when like the plastic starts to come off of your like the plastic wrap starts to come off your tires. Like that's when you need it. Oh, you've never had a car with plastic wrap?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
You must be poor.
Garbage cars you drive.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll send you that over if you want to check that out. I'm sure there's some really good Udemy courses on it too, but there's those.
But then you're also certified.
Yeah.
You're like,
for
whatever that means. I've seen people at our work, they have those certifications on their LinkedIn as well. And so it's like that you have the weight of, it's cool that you have the knowledge, whether it's Udemy or a book or whatever, but ideally you'll have the knowledge and then you have the weight of that certification company
Yeah.
behind you, which maybe is a benefit.
Yeah. Well, we've took up a lot of your day so far, Sean, and I know it's getting close to dinner time over there, but one thing we like to do at the end of the podcast is give you a chance, put you on the spot, and have you give a junior developer looking to become or get his first job. What's your advice to him? What did you do right? What would you say somebody should do if they're right now without a job and they're trying to land their first one?
If you love to code and you want your career field to be in a particular stack that you absolutely could see yourself doing for free, then you just got to be patient and make sure that you get the fundamentals right. The number one thing I can say is that you should find a book that isn't just a reference book or a let's build an app book, but actually goes into the nitty gritty of why the tech stack is doing whatever it is it's doing. If you want to learn Django, there's 2 scoops of Django, and that's that field's watershed book. The book that I said, the Android book, the Dummies book, which I'll send you guys what the title is. I haven't read it in a while, but that's Android's version of a watershed book. But just making sure that you know the fundamentals and that you love to do it. You could do it for free if you wanted to. It'll come. It'll get there. It seems like a lot. It took to put it in perspective, when I was done with the Udacity boot camp for Android, it was May 2017, and I didn't get the job at Flink after hardcore interviewing and searching until mid-August. So it literally took more than 3 months to find a job. But once you have that job, it's all. I mean, once that first job is there, it's all downhill. I mean, not just downhill, but it's yeah.
You're saying it's easy. It's your career is uphill, but the challenge is downhill.
Yes. Yeah. That first job that you land, it sets you up for a great career to follow.
So one last question. We haven't asked this before, but what book would you recommend that's not necessarily technical, but maybe more about just like soft skills? Like what would be your number one recommendation? Got to read.
That's a great question. For a junior developer or for any developer, or
let's just say anybody.
Say for anybody.
What's your favorite soft skills book?
That's a great question.
If you got a couple, you can just rattle them off. I'm just curious.
I do like Managing Humans, this book that my boss recommended to me for aspiring managers, or even just there is that point in your career at the beginning when you're not really sure why the process is the way it is, or how the sausage gets made when you're because maybe you don't go to every single pre-planning meeting or pre-grooming meeting, right? You just get the tickets and that's it. That's a good book that really shows you the why, the how. Why am I getting this ticket? What's it for? What happened? Managing Humans by Michael Lopp. That's a good one. I would also recommend. I'm gonna Google it right now. I'm gonna use my Google skills here.
Somebody should write a book on how to Google. Maybe it's already out there.
Oh, a dummies book, how to Google for dummies.
Yeah.
Let me Google that for you. There's a website for that. That's different.
People.
You know who the author is?
I don't. I'm managing people. 9 Lies About the Work. A free-thinking leader's guide to the real world of the real world by Ashley Goodall and Marcus Bingham.
Okay, 9 Lies About Work.
9 Lies About Work.
Okay. Hey, cool. Yeah, I haven't read that. I'll check that out.
Yeah. I like the title. I like the title of the first one. It just gets straight to the point. Managing Humans.
Managing Humans.
I like it.
Yeah.
Are you managing
That
dogs
one's
or managing humans?
done. Yeah. Yes, I am managing humans. Okay, good. All right, get out of here.
Good. All right, Sean. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. We both enjoyed it,
Yeah, it was a
and
lot of fun.
yeah, and that sums up. We're on
I
15.
think we're on 15 now. Yeah.
15, and it ain't stopping. Hopefully, you'll come on again in the future. Again, we really appreciate
We'll call
it.
you Manager Sean.
Well, yeah, we'll call you Manager Sean by then. Looking forward to seeing where you're at the next time.
We definitely need to get the whole OG Flink crew on one podcast.
That's
that would
true.
be something.
We could make it happen. We could get
yeah,
minus probably Travis, but we could probably and Mark. We could probably get everybody else on. But anyways, that's for another time. Yeah, we'll get everybody on. That'll be really cool to have like a round table. That would probably go on for 8 hours though, so we got to be careful with that. Anyways,
I'd listen to it.
Yeah, me too.
You
Anyway,
guys would be a part of it.
well, and by nature, we would have to listen to it, Matt.
Yeah, I'm the only one listening to it for the first time.
Anyways, thanks for joining us on episode 15, and we'll see everybody next week.